If anybody gets restless, we can take a little break in the middle, but I suspect the time will go by quickly as well. All right, so if you wouldn't mind just formally for the record, introducing yourself. And then I think we've got a presentation that we'd like to share. It's also on our committee page.
Yes. For the record, Alicia Utter, Grand Isle County, owner of Arbor Farmstead and vice chair of the Working Lands Enterprise Board. So I'm going to kick us off today with a little background of what the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative is. In 2012, the Vermont legislature and Governor Shovlin created the Working Lands Enterprise Funds to make strategic investments that support a resilient and sustainable farm, food, and forest economy in the state. So there was critical foresight at this time of looking at the landscape as an inflection point that we needed to make investments into the businesses working the landscape. So the program is founded in principles of widespread participation and responsiveness to ever-evolving contexts. So today, as you all are well familiar, the agricultural and forest sectors are seeing a reduction in federal funds available, in addition to navigating severe weather events, drought, back-to-back flooding, and we need to make these forward-looking investments on our working lands businesses now more than ever. So I'm going to start with this summary impact report. So this looks at the lifespan of the program, and these numbers speak for themselves. The initiative has successfully advanced according to the statute. The program was created to save Vermont's working landscape. And you can see that 593 projects have been funded for a total of $19.5 million. So not only were these state dollars, we also saw matching funds. So that was really able to leverage the power of the dollar to invest into the landscape. And this covered all 14 counties in Vermont. Furthermore, these are reports that we get as a result of these investments. 48% of businesses added jobs, 77% of grantees increased production, 74% of businesses reported increased sales, and this represents a total of 25,000 acres that are impacted as a result of these funds. And as you can see, this does indeed touch on all 14 counties. This reflects how much is invested in each of the counties. Now, program demand. At the inception of this program, it was uncertain whether farm and forest entities would take the time to go through this granting process and pursue funds. And we've worked really diligently to make it as accessible as possible. You see here that in this past funding year, we had over $5 million in requests. However, a budget of $1 million. So that reflects about 20% of requests we were able to fund. So I'll share this. The hardest part of my role with the Working Lands Board is the review process. And I'm not speaking to the tedious nature, it is time intensive, but looking at so many compelling applications on my desk and being able to fund so few. Not only do they meet eligibility, but many of them are innovative and or allowing their businesses to sustain. And this is representative of new businesses and also multi-generational businesses. Oh, go ahead.
Right. I just wondered what accounts for the spike in 2024.
Do we have a formal?
I think more funds, more funding opportunities, more funds were available. We had $3 million available in funding. So we had more funding opportunities that were offered and therefore more demand.
So if you had a lot of money, if you had way more money than be,
yeah, I think
way more people wanting it.
Demand exists, yeah. So
Yeah.
when, I mean, it's a good, when there was 2 million, there was 10 million in requests.
Multiplier,
So there's
yeah.
sort of a multiplier effect, yes.
And we are anticipating for this demand to continue to grow, again, resulting from federal funding, but also unprecedented farming challenges. So I'm able to speak with grantees just when I'm out in my own community, speaking with other farmers or foresters. And it's the same when I do site visits. We get to go follow up and see our projects in action. And folks continuously emphasize that these funds were vital. Their businesses are flourishing today because of that investment. So I encourage you all to review the impact reports that you have before you and continue to make these investments in the Vermont working landscape and the people who steward it. I'm going to go ahead.
Yeah, just before you pass it on, Representative Burke, did you follow up?
I was just going to ask if this, just because of the question you asked, John, if this past year there was a matching matching a requirement for the.
Not a requirement, but it was grantees were, or applicants were invited to share if there was gonna be investments outside of the grant fund, but it was not required.
Historically, has there been at some times a match?
Yeah,
Historically, yes.
historically,
I will say I'm really proud of how evolutionary our program has been and being really reflective of feedback from applicants, both those who have received grant funding and those who haven't. So taking into account those and recognizing whether matching funds is a limiting factor.
Then Nelson.
Yeah, a lot of times what happens, Greg, you apply for a piece of equipment and you get funded and you don't receive your grant until you purchase that piece of equipment. So depending on the size of the grant you get, the cost of the piece of equipment. One time we received a grant, but we weren't able to utilize it, and a person on the committee reached out to see if we were gonna be able to continue on, and we declined, and so they were able to use that money elsewhere. But a lot of times it requires, and sometimes it's a 50%. You know, the grants for 50% of the equipment, maybe perhaps sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. And then it's up to the individual receiver of the grant, if they can go forward. But anytime you get a grant, you do have some equity in that equipment when you buy it.
Just to follow up, do you track leveraging then? Like if you get a working lands grant, does that sometimes lead to, another grant or funding in other places because you got that first working lands grant?
yes, actually, in one of the, we're gonna be back here tomorrow with some grantees. We're gonna speak specifically to their project. It's actually interesting. I was talking to one of them today, and that was actually one of the things that she really wanted to speak to. And it wasn't, it's getting the grant, but it's also getting the buy-in from the state to be able to say, look, the state of Vermont believes that we can achieve this. So you should too, like
Exactly.
it's that, so, yeah.
I'm sure you're gonna get into more detail, but so for 2026, the $1 million available funding, that's already happened. Has that already been dispersed or is that?
No,
Not yet?
so we included the applications have been closed. The application windows have been closed. But the decisions have not yet been made for the business enhancement grant. Because we had the funds available and the funds requested, we added it. But this presentation is very much focused on fiscal year 2025 and those grantees.
Good, thank you.
Pass it off to Elizabeth.
I think I'm gonna try to be my own.
Find power.
Yeah, I did. I'm sort of, is this okay for you?
Absolutely fine.
Okay.
Receive Jared wrapped around his neck, we'll stop. No wrap.
So, Elizabeth Sipple, for the record, Program Manager of the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative. So I'm going to be providing an overview into investments made in fiscal year 2025. Those grants are not yet closed, but we're beginning to already see impacts that we can share. And certainly all of the funds are allocated and grantees are out there doing the work right now. And I am going to take a minute to highlight two of the most important programmatic elements, or two of the most important. I think there are a number, but that we feel really allows the program to stay dynamic, responsive, impactful within a context that just keeps changing. The first of which is the Working Lands Enterprise Board. Act 142, so in the very beginning of the program, tasked the board with administering the program. It is a very diverse board what you're seeing on this slide is the founders of the program created specific seats that they wanted filled by people from working within the farm and forest sectors who can represent, speak to, you know, that specific supply chain, that specific supply chain role. So I'm not going to read through, you know, all of the seats that are represented, but the buckets are, we have the forestry business seats, the agricultural business seats, the maple business seat, agricultural and forestry stakeholders. We have representation from the Agency of Agriculture, the Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation, and the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. And then we also, the board was created with 3 ex officio seats that are held by organizations that are working day in and day out with working land businesses in the field. So that's the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund, the Vermont Housing Conservation Board, and the Vermont Economic Development Authority. So I think of the board as sort of the cardiovascular system of the program, where we just have, or the nervous system, I'm not sure what's the better image, but we have people going out literally and living in every part of the state, doing all different jobs, being engaged in different parts of the ag and forest supply chains, and then coming back to the collective of the program to really make sure that we have a thorough analysis of landscape level needs, but also are really making the best investments for even the individual grantee businesses. So the board is a really essential part of the program.
Do you have any trouble filling the seats, the board seats?
I would say the one challenge that comes up for the business seats is that you cannot receive or apply for a grant while you are serving on the board. That has come up, you know, I would say a number of times where people are like, oh, I'm really interested, but I'm also thinking of applying in the next year or two. And therefore, you know, don't want to sit on the board right now.
Is it a 3-year commitment?
It's a 3-year tenure. And yeah, we really encourage people to think deeply about the commitment and make the 3-year commitment, because it definitely strengthens the board to have that. And many that you max out at 3-year terms. And we do have people who have maxed out. We had 2 folks leave the board last year because they had completed their 3-year terms, which is impressive.
So it's not a situation where you can just recuse yourself. You just can't be on the board if you're not eligible, rather, if you're on the board.
And I think that there's room personally, actually, it's one of the things that I've been thinking about. I think there could be room to, you wouldn't want to recuse yourself for, you know, all 3 years that you were on the board, clearly, but because we depend on these sector experts to help make the decisions, you know, within these sectors. So we want them to participate in the decision-making process, but I think it would be possible to recuse from like 1 year if that was, you know, would really open it up to business owners, because it's absolutely critical that we have business owners that are, you know, actively functioning in the landscape on the board.
I just wondered how many business seats are past recipients? Must be.
Ooh, that's a good question. Currently,
Oh, yeah, sure.
yeah,
Like Alicia.
not a past recipient, are you?
I've served on the board at least 6 years, so I've recused myself.
But you've never received, your business has never received, yeah. I think, actually can't think of any business, yeah,
Recipients on the board.
no.
One of the people that had to step down last year was, but
Yeah,
You can see where that would be a struggle bus. Are these 100% volunteered seats on the board?
The board is able to request a stipend because we do meet once every month for 3 hours. And then there are also subcommittees that meet. The subcommittee, the meetings of the subcommittees tend to ramp up right before our summer symposiums, which is where the board really comes together in person to think strategically about what's needed across the landscape. And so the subcommittees, ag, forestry, service provision, come together to talk to stakeholders and think about the strategy that they want to propose.
Are those in person or?
The symposiums are day-long meetings in person, and the subcommittee meetings are typically online. So a stipend is available. I will say that it is interesting how few board members claim that stipend. Yeah. I mean, there are some, but it's like certainly not across the board. No pun intended, but.
And what is the cost of this to the agencies, forestry, agriculture and commerce?
The board,
Yeah, so how much money comes out of this? Like if you receive $1 million, how much money of it comes out to run? the
actually
program?
none
Is it
right now. Zero.
zero?
So it comes right now, the board stipend right now comes out of the general operating funds of the Agricultural Development Division, which is where Claire and I are housed.
So the $1 million that we saw a moment ago for FY 25 and FY 26, all of that money gets dispersed as grants.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. So, yeah.
So there is an operating cost, obviously, but it's borne within the department's budget.
Yeah, so it's presented within exactly, the agency's budget.
The agency's budget, yeah.
Okay.
So I think another very strong and important part of the program's process is our commitment to a robust participatory review process for each and every grant application. Every application is read by 3 individual reviewers. And those 3 individual reviewers score the application based on a rubric, but they also provide comments, like written comments on the application. In 2025, we received 150 applications, and we recruited 48 reviewers from these organizations and sectors to review those applications. And after the 3 individual reviews, reviewers then come together for a very in-depth 3-hour-long review committee conversation, which happens per sector. So we have a dairy and livestock, a produce, specialty foods, maple, and forest industry subsector review committees that then come together and they discuss up to 20 applications one by one. And then they are making recommendations to the board. And they are also, for the weaker applications, thinking about helpful, impactful feedback that could be offered to the applicant if requested. So we offer feedback, individualized feedback to every applicant if they request it. We don't force it, but if it's requested, we gather that. And that's a part of the review process as well.
Is that a lot of uptake or?
Yes.
So you're actively letting people know that they can request it?
Yeah, exactly. So when they receive their application update, it's one of the key parts of the update. And we share right in the update for unsuccessful applicants that there are many applicants that are unsuccessful and then they come back and they are, they implement the recommendations and they come back and they are successful. And I think we see, I guess we see per grant opportunity, we continue to see an increased number of applications that we're receiving, but I guess it's just important for me to name that we are very committed to the individual review of each and every application. One, to respect the time and effort that applicants have put in to submitting an application, but also to make sure that we're using the funds to the best and highest use. So now we're sort of zooming into the fiscal year 2025 data and impact. So we reviewed the 150 applications. We were able to fund 38 projects with $1,064,208,000 of Working Lands funds awarded. The 64,000 over the 1 million is due to deobligated funds. So grants that either there's one grant that had to be closed. The grantee was awarded and then ended up deciding that they actually couldn't accept the grant awards. And so that's rolled over into the next fiscal year. And then sometimes grantees underspend slightly and we pool that money and then invest it in the next fiscal year. And as we already covered, the 5 million, a little over 5 million in requested funds. And I think this slide is starting to get to the real, heart of the program. This is not capturing, in the beginning, Alicia showed the percentage of grantees that increase sales, output, acres in production based on the grant project. This just gives you a snapshot of what the 2025 cohort of grantees is contributing to the Vermont working landscape and economy. So our 2025 grantees are stewarding 1,524 acres. Collectively, they have $12,200,000 in annual sales revenue, and they are employing 146 people. So I think the reason this feels important to me is just to say that the program, for relatively minor investments, those businesses are turning around and contributing a lot to our economy through land stewardship, but also through tax revenue and jobs created. Which I think, as we're talking more about budgets and like maybe return on investment, like this information is really important, I think.
Representative Nelson.
Yeah.
How many acres do you think you stewarded
Total. So 25,000 is a low estimate. But that's cumulatively, we feel that the reason it's a low estimate is because it's based on voluntary, it's now a required data set. But in the earlier years of the program, it was based on a voluntary survey.
and were the seed drills that were a few years ago, a bunch of people applied for grants for no-till drills?
That might be through water quality.
Was that water
True.
quality?
Like a BMP program.
Yeah, maybe, I can't remember. I know those drills had incredible impact on acreage. Like ours alone has done 4,000 acres.
Oh, or maybe it was the SEEP program,
Yeah, maybe,
again, through our water quality division.
yeah.
Representative O'Brien.
Elizabeth, I just wondered, is there a way you can say with the Working Lands grants, this was the difference with all these numbers? I'm thinking of like Myers Trucking, say last year, didn't they really get one? So did they hire, 8
Yeah.
FTE? So it'd be interesting to see
The jobs
It
created.
seemed like they were going to go out of business. They were successful already, but you sort of took them maybe to the next level. Or they
Exactly.
went away. So it'd be interesting to see those splits.
So that we are collecting that data. So that like, because right now this is people employed and what you're saying is jobs created due to grant investments.
Yeah,
And I think acres put into production is another data point that we collect. And that is different from like land stewardship. So acres that are also, we're seeing like improved land stewardship due to grant funds. We've been doing actually like a really deep dive data, like cleaning and overhaul. And those percentages from the beginning that show the percent of grantees from the beginning that have increased their income, increased output, and increased acreage. Is that the other one in the first? That's what we're trying to capture there. Percentages can be better than hard numbers. But mostly for the data mining. Because we just don't have the information for everybody going back 10 years. But going forward, we're going to be able to have it, which is great. So that's the overview of fiscal year 2025, the amount of, actually, I forgot something very important, and that's going to go back to this. So beginning in 2021, the board was able to leverage special appropriations that were made to the program to make investments of up to $250,000 specifically for projects that were going to invest in supply chain infrastructure that was going to benefit the forest or ag supply chains. In 2025, as you can see here, the program had only the base appropriation of $1 million to work with. So we were not able to offer the larger $250,000 supply chain impact grants, but we did offer our 3 flagship programs, which were the Business Enhancement Grant, which we had the smallest award was $13,000 and the largest award was $50,000. The Service Provider and Producer Association Grant, which the smallest award there was $18,000 and the largest award was $75,000. And then we had the Trade Show Assistance Grants, which the smallest award there was $2,000 and the largest was $5,000. So those are the grant opportunities that made up the 38 funded projects. And as you will see in the presentations following mine, where we're going to be featuring more of the grantees, we were able to fund a huge array of business size and business stage. So our largest business, awarded business, had just over $5 million in sales revenue annually with 45 employees. And it's a company that's been in business for 80 years. And then on the polar opposite, we were able to fund a beginning business that had 1.5 FTEs. They had been in operation this would have been their second season, and they were, at $10,000. But through the grant, that went up significantly. And we're actually going to talk about that grantee. So I think that that begins to give you a sense of the diversity in projects and like the diversity in the types of businesses that are funded. But in the following presentations, you're going to have a much deeper dive into that diversity, looking at investments that are both catalytic for individual businesses, but also investments that are looking to benefit the food and forestry systems more largely. And I can take questions or I can pass.
Okay, any questions? All right,
And I did try, I just want to name that in designing this testimony, I kept 25 minutes at the end, which we really haven't done previously for Q&A, because I feel like it's so important. And also hearing, from you, Representative Durfee, it seems even more important this year.
all right, great. Thank you.
Claire Salerno, Program Coordinator for the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative. So I'm the other staff person for the program along with Elizabeth. And yeah, so this slide is showing you the wide variety of businesses and projects funded in FY25 through the Business Enhancement Grant, which is our flagship grant for businesses. It funds equipment, infrastructure, marketing, workforce development. And these are one-year grants ranging from $10,000 to $50,000. And I'm going to introduce you to some of these grantees to further demonstrate the range of businesses and projects that have received grant funds in 2025 and demonstrate the diverse types of impacts that these grants have. I'm not going to speak to the grantees that are featured in the impact report. You can read stories about them there. And we also have grantees that will be coming in tomorrow that you'll hear directly from, so I won't speak to them either. And this full list is also in the impact report. Great. Yeah, so Carmen Brook Farm in Swanton, they were one of three maple business grantees that we had. And so their grant funded project is modernizing their maple syrup and candy production infrastructure to meet demand, improve efficiency, and support long-term business sustainability. And so they're installing a boiler system and a heat exchanger, which reduce syrup preheating time for bottling and candy production by 60%. And they also purchased a 4-port bottling system. And so these are allowing Carmen Brook Farm to double daily production capacity. So a single employee can now bottle 2 barrels of syrup in 4 hours, which before used to take 11 hours. And so with syrup sales increasing, these upgrades are essential for their ability to meet market demand. They have quite a few wholesale customers around the state. And another part of their project was the candy production side. They purchased an electric steam kettle and a specialty vacuum cooling system. So those tools reduce candy production from about 4.5 hours per batch to just under 2 hours. And they also help improve product consistency and texture while speeding up production. So this is putting them in a better place to expand their wholesale markets. The next grant that I want to share with you is Agricola Farm in Panton. And their project is focused on increasing sales of cured meat from $13,000 a month to $28,000 a month, so more than doubling, and projecting to reach up to $35,000 per month in the year after the grant ends. So the project funded a curing cabinet and hanging racks for cured meats, so salamis and other types of meat. And it also increased the number of pens in the barn to overwinter more pigs. So with this increased curing capacity and pens in their barn, they're now increasing the number of pigs raised at the farm annually from 140 pigs to 220 each year. And they've also signed a lease for a larger processing facility that's 3 times the size of the current one, and they've secured approval from USDA to begin processing in the new space. And they've already hired and trained 3 new part-time workers to help with the increased production. This is a great example of funds in the meat industry. Shifting over to the produce side of things, Conscious Homestead in Winooski has been strategizing how to produce more food on their pretty small site to fulfill their community's needs. And they have a big climate focus with this grant. So their gardens have been facing increased disease pressure, soil loss, and declined plant productivity. So the grant funded research, development, and implementation of a climate smart garden redesign. So that included site design, and then plant selection to optimize food production. And have a big focus on like community involvement in the farm, and they follow what they call the Each One Teach One principle. And their project includes community training on climate smart agriculture techniques and technologies. Crossroad Maple is another one of the Maple grantees. This is on the production side, on the sap collection side. The grant funds were used to enhance their operational efficiency by upgrading the technology for their vacuum monitoring system to minimize sap loss during collection. So having these monitoring systems can save huge amounts of time, being able to find the leaks in the woods, and also improve safety for workers when you're out there digging in the snow, trying to find out where the sap leak is. Now you know exactly where it is through the system. And they're on, as it says here, 430 acres. They have 19,000 taps. So with a system that size, having a monitoring system is really huge. And the farm had actually already invested in a base package for the system that monitors and allows for remote control of the vacuum pumps and sap tank levels on the Enosburg portion of their sugar woods, which cover 240 acres. But that current system didn't have the ability to monitor pressure leaks in the sap lines, and it wasn't at all in the Bakersfield portion of their sugar woods. So the project is expanding the monitoring system to all 430 acres of sugar woods, so that automation covers the 19,000 taps and adds the ability to monitor vacuum pressure on the sap lines. So this has been huge for them, and it will help them increase syrup production by 20 to 30%, increase sales and revenue by about 70,000 annually, and reduce labor hours spent on sap collection system repair by up to 30%.
Representative Nelson?
Yeah, does that work via cell phone? It calls and
I don't know if it calls, but yeah, you can monitor it on a mobile device.
a friend of mine put that in and he put my number down as a number.
Now you're getting calls.
You can just,
Yeah,
when you get done today, you can go and check my woods.
yeah. Daniel Shaughnessy did that to me. Or Cameron.
Representative O'Brien?
I just wondered if sometimes there was overlap with, say, the meat maple produce grants that Ag had and these, because they could, I mean, potentially you could
In terms of the same grant.
apply for both, or you recommend, no, we'll apply for our working lands.
Correct. Yeah, we, when those were both offered, we recommended that we were not allowing folks to receive both. They could apply for both, but they could only have accepted one should they have been offered one. And we actually did not allow the folks that received those meat maple produce grants to apply for working lands grants. They have the same restriction of a 3-year waiting period as working lands grantees. And that is because the demand, as you know, is just so high that we want to ensure that folks that have received recent state investments, that other businesses are able to receive those. I don't know the numbers. Certainly a lot of people that applied for those grants and didn't receive them have applied for working lands grants. I couldn't tell you
But
specifically.
just to clarify,
Yeah.
this fiscal year though, those grants were not in it.
It's a one time, right?
Yeah, that was a one time.
So they weren't, we didn't have
Yeah.
that scenario in fiscal year 25.
You also have, I mean, repeat appliers sometimes, like they get close, right? And you recommend, well, if you add this much or.
Yeah, we'll recommend, it really depends on sort of, sometimes we've even recommended they were applying for a certain type of equipment and the feedback was, well, based on actually the operation that you have and the scale you're at, we actually think this other piece of equipment might be more beneficial, or it might be more around, you're not at this stage in your business. We recommend you go work with a business advisor, different pieces like that. Yeah, but it's challenging. I mean, the demand is high and we've seen people that come back and make improvements and there's still not enough funds.
So I think the sort of fine line is sometimes there really are excellent shovel-ready projects, but the feedback really is, this just wasn't as impactful for your business, as another grant project was, or it wasn't as impactful for like potentially like a larger like landscape impact. And those are the hardest applications to offer feedback to, because there's just not, sometimes the feedback is quite limited. Just strong project and limited funds. Yeah.
So the next project I want to share with you all is Silva Curl, which is in Hardwick. I don't know if you all are familiar with this product. It's really interesting. It's a wood packaging product. It's shavings made from poplar wood, and they're a business to business enterprise. So other businesses use this in their packaging. Farms like Jasper Hill, Big Picture Farm, which sells caramels, a lot of other working lands businesses. So other maple businesses or specialty food businesses use this packaging to ship their products. And it's a really nice alternative to plastic packaging that could be used instead of styrofoam peanuts or bubble wrap. And the wood they source is they purchase from Goodridge Lumber in Albany, who those of you that were here last year would have spoken with them. And they buy all their wood from Vermont loggers. So this is all Vermont wood. And sorry.
Cedar. Mostly cedar is coming from Goodrich.
Yes, but this is a poplar product. Yeah.
They're taking milled lumber and turning it into this final product, or are they getting?
I think they're getting either saw logs or, I don't think they're getting.
Low end.
Yeah.
Yeah, valley.
It's normally a wood that's used for pulp.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Thinking of we've been talking about wood products manufacturers as a class or category, and we always say, well, that means sawmills, that means maybe firewood producers, and maybe a few other things, but this would be another one to add.
Yeah.
To this thing.
For sure. And they can process 100,000 board feet of lumber at full capacity. So they very much are. It's not. Yes. So they're very passionate about the forest economy and keeping forest land productive. And they've faced the challenge that is common for many small businesses, which is trying to keep their website fresh and up to date, while search engines are constantly changing requirements and algorithms that make it hard to compete with paid advertising. So the project has been overcoming these challenges with specific ongoing website work and ad campaigns on Google, Etsy, and Amazon. And so far this year, the grant is not done yet. The work has resulted in 16 new clients. And I think this is a good example. We are more often funding infrastructure or equipment, but I think this is a really good example of relative to other projects, the smaller investment in marketing that really is sort of more on the back end of the business, but has really clear impacts. And you can, if you go on to their website or look at their social media, there are some cool storytelling that they're doing to really connect this product to the forest economy.
So some trade show.
Yes, yeah. I believe they had in the past received the trade show assistant grant. They are based in Hardwick, and everything's made in Hardwick. Sunrise Organic Farm is in White River Junction, and with their Working Lands grant project, they expanded their pasture-based egg business. So they purchased a 20-foot by 48-foot mobile pasture coop, which replaced 3 smaller coops, and expanded their production space by 50%. And the farm, what's that?
The heck of a herd of chickens.
The farm, I actually don't know the size yet of their flock, but they use matching funds to purchase the nest boxes, roost feed stations, and other equipment to complete the new facility. And so their weekly egg production this year, they are all done this project. It jumped from 200 dozen a week to 275 dozen a week with the new coop. And they maxed out at 275 dozen per week this year because they couldn't get a full order of plants in the spring. So they believe that this year they expect to exceed 300 dozen per week. And I also think this is a great example of the lower end grant amount projects that have a pretty significant impact on an operation. And so with that, this is just a sample of the diverse businesses and projects that the Business Enhancement Grant funded in FY25, and you'll hear more tomorrow directly from other grantees.
Thank you.
Okay. For the record, Abby Willard, Vermont Agency of Agriculture. I always love hearing about the business enhancement grantees. It's like really nice to see what the investment can do to support the growth of a particular business. The Working Lands Board and the program has made a consistent and conscious decision to invest both in direct assistance to businesses, but then also investments in services. And so over the years, there's also been a sub portion of the base of the allocation that supports service provider or producer association grants. So in fiscal year 25, there were 9 awards in that category that totaled just over $369,000 in grant awards. And the focus for the service provider investments were been the same for the past few years. And those priorities are focused on executive business skills for business planning, looking at market development, succession planning, and workforce development support for businesses, both in the agricultural and forestry sector. And those focus areas are really aligned with what we learned in the Ag and Food System Strategic Plan and in the Future of Ag Action Plan, is where their priorities were and the needs within the service provision to support businesses. We thought we'd do the same thing as with the business enhancement, is just sort of highlight a few of these. There's some common investments that have happened year over year, supporting the VHCB's Farm and Forest Viability Program that provides business technical assistance support, and Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund that has their forest product development program. So those are 2 that I'm not going to highlight, but I just want to note that like this time right now feels like a really important moment to make investments in established and tried and true programs and supports. And so a lot of the technical assistance and service provision that supports ag and food businesses and forestry and wood product manufacturing is critical right now, just given all the volatility and the transitions and uncertainty that's happening around access to funding. So I'm going to share 3 examples quickly, just noting the time. One is the Sprout program, which we've actually talked about in this committee, and it's been highlighted in impact reports in the past. But it's a special loan program that we like to highlight simply because it's not your typical direct investment in a business, and it's not your typical technical assistance, but it's an alternative investment that has provided opportunities for early stage and startup businesses to be able to access capital through very low interest loans when they may not have been, the business may not have been eligible for a traditional loan. So the Sprout Loan Program is managed by the Vermont Community Loan Fund, and there's been a partnership with the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative for many years to make these types of Sprout loan investments. So since 2016, the Sprout program has provided 56 loans to Vermont businesses, again, both in the ag and forestry sectors. And they're typically low interest loans up to $60,000. The typical range of terms is from 2 to 7 years, and they start at 1% for first 2 years and then fixed 2% interest rate thereafter. So really great rates for some of those non-traditional businesses. And they're up to $60,000. So again, they can be relatively small loans, or they can be a pretty significant investment for a business.
Just quickly,
Yeah,
what's
right.
Sprout?
What does it mean? It's not an acronym as I understand. So it's just like Sprout, as in like
Get it.
giving you the chance to sort of grow. So the Sprout Loan Program is as it's entitled.
I get it.
Yeah, Vermont Community Loan Fund.
Everything's,
I had thought for a while because it's all caps. So then you would think maybe that is.
it's a word you can say.
Right, but it's not. Yeah. I think
We'll
it's
think
more of
about
just
it.
like the image of helping a business get started. With the fiscal year 25 grant, as of September 30th, when there was some reporting shared, they'd closed on 4 loans totaling $202,000 with an additional 5 subsidized loans that are anticipated to close by July of this year.
So a few examples of the types of loans. I'm not going to identify the business, but just to give you a sense of the type of loan investments and what they might have supported. They sound and feel very similar to some of the business enhancement grants. So this is a real opportunity to leverage where the Sprout grant was only for $72,000, but the loans that they're able to execute have additional funding attached to them. So one was a startup seed company located in Northfield. That's looking at cold and short season climate, vegetables, herbs, and flowers. So feels appropriate given the season. A diversified farm in West Haven that's focused on pastured meat, eggs, and vegetables. And they purchased a walk behind rototiller to expand their crop production on relatively small acres. A Tunbridge-based early stage operation that raises sheep and chicken for both meat, wool, and that was a $60,000 amount to support some barn improvements. And then another was a garlic farm that grows 8 different varieties of garlic, and this was to support the construction of a curing and processing barn for their operation. So a variety of different projects supported by that investment that the Working Lands Enterprise Board made.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you. Is that money's paid back? Because it's a loan.
Yeah.
Does that go back into the Sprout loan program, so it gives them more monies every year to loan out?
That's my understanding of how the program works.
Yeah, so the capital is provided by the Vermont Community Loan Fund, and the grant funds are just being used to subsidize the interest. So to cover some of the administrative costs to the Vermont Community Loan Fund managing the program. But the Vermont Community Loan Fund by July will have made over 500,000, like that's their target in loans, with our $72,000 match. Not match, but contribution. So it is, I think Abby, you said, it's a really good way to leverage Working Lands funds. And it's not a grant, but it is very low interest.
Yeah,
And yeah,
and the money comes back in, does that add to their ability to make? Will that fund grow over time to be available to more people or greater amounts? What I'm asking.
I believe, yeah, the payments go back into the program. I don't know the source of the full kind of like base lending budget that the program has. I'm sure there's multiple sources.
It doesn't grow much because there's no interest. So, the businesses are really paying back in what they're given only,
Mhm.
pretty much. 1% for 1 year and then 2%. But it slowly grows. And the Vermont Community Loan Fund has continued to put capital into it. And they fundraise and different sort of have some fundraising strategies that they use to build up that capital.
Well, in the days of 8%.
Exactly.
Higher interest rate loans, anything helps.
Yeah, so there's an eligibility criteria to be eligible for a Sprout loan program. So it is focused on early stage and kind of like beginning businesses that are in the working land sector.
And the program was created to get it in conjunction with the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative. So it's been a partnership from the beginning.
Abby, well, go ahead, Representative Lipsky, and then if you wouldn't mind, or maybe Elizabeth could, if we were looking over here, Representative Nelson and I, we've got reflection off the roof of the sun. If you could just turn that behind your other shoulder.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You got it.
Perfect, yeah. Representative Lipsky.
Abby,
Mhm.
merging logger education
Yeah,
with BWK. What was the grant for?
I was going to talk about that next, Representative Lipsky, so I'm glad.
Is that a grant or a loan?
It was a grant, yeah. So the only loan investments that the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative contributes towards would be through the Sprout program. And then Vermont Community Loan Fund makes the loans. So it's still a grant from the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative to that organization. So in the case of the Vermont Woodlands Association. So that was a conversation that started back in 2024, as I understand, between the Vermont-based Loggers Education to Advance Professionalism, so Vermont LEAP program, looking to have a potential merger with Vermont Woodlands Association.
Was LEAP an FPR program or?
I don't know that I can answer that.
I believe our education program has been around for a while.
20 years.
There's over 200 LEAP trained loggers in the state. It's the sort of homegrown or industry grown program that FPR supported that we can't take credit for starting it. There's some loggers, Birdsall LEAP, Jeff, one of the key people that founded LEAP way back in the day.
So the merger, did they sell it to
Well,
VWA or?
more recently, VWA is taking over sort of the day-to-day management of LEAP. We've set up a subcommittee to the board, that's a sort of to the board of VWA, which is the technical advisory committee for LEAP. And Kate Ford is the executive director of LEAP, and her team will be the ones promoting LEAP, securing funding, offer LEAP trainings, ensuring that the list of LEAP individuals is up to date, and doing the LEAP certification. You complete the training, you get certified, that gives you access to certain mills, that gives you access to certain long-term financing, such as what VITA is offering now. So VWA is just playing kind of I would say, management support role to the LEAP certification process.
That's great to have Oliver here in the room. Yeah, so the grant was about $39,000. And it is essentially supporting that merger between the LEAP program and VWA. So it will
So did
cover.
LEAP go out of business and then it's started up by the VWA or?
I wasn't under the impression that they went out of business, but more that they were looking for like a new sort of like fiscal sponsor or, organization to kind of like house the program within. So I think it was my understanding from the bit that I know, and Elizabeth may know more, is that it was like a mutual understanding of like, how do we merge this program with an organization that already has relationships with woodland landowners and sort of sees the value of having that kind of a trained, skilled workforce to kind of like continue to support the working landscape.
So a part of the grant was actually legal advice, because they weren't sure, when they wrote the grant, they actually weren't sure if they were gonna merge or what the structure was gonna look like, given that the Vermont Woodlands Association was gonna take over more of the day-to-day management. And the two boards of the two organizations worked with an advisor that was funded through grant funds. And the ultimate decision was to do a complete merger. So Vermont LEAP is going to be completely housed within the VWA, and grant funds are paying for a partial salary for 1 year for a new employee that's going to be based at VWA to help launch help launch LEAP in this new position. And they've done already a number of trainings this year, and we're still, we're not finished with the grant period. I think, is it 5?
Yes, they've done 5 workshops already,
With the-
reaching
with
135
the new
loggers.
structure. But they're also going, the VWA is now going to be managing also all of like the educational materials. But they're almost done the legal merger part, but they're like, that's the path they're taking. So there won't be 2 boards. It'll just be 1 board. It's gonna be a fully merged.
Yeah, and I think as Elizabeth is describing, part of the grant was supporting that new kind of like plan, like what would be the structure, the board composition, the bylaws, the staffing. So all of that would be part of kind of like what this grant would support. And then I don't know a lot about this, maybe others in the room do, but then there was also a component to the project was like having a very community involved process about this merger and the union of the two different missions and focus of LEAP and VWA. And it was my understanding is that it was well received to be able to have the opportunity for public input and active membership be able to weigh in on how they thought this would best work. And then the last project to focus on is Connecticut oh, should I stop for a moment?
I want to talk about this one.
Okay, me too. This one is actually a really exciting pilot project. It was a $20,000 grant to the Connecticut River Watershed Farmers Alliance to focus on a pilot project of how to manage bale wrap to become a recycled product. It's a lot of plastic on farms, and this was a farmer-led initiative to be able to see how many farms could they get to be able to provide the bale wrap to reach a 20-ton goal of being able to go around and collect it, aggregate it, and then be able to like pack it, bale it, and then have it, be kind of suitable for recycling. At the Connecticut River Watershed Farmers Alliance annual meeting, they talked about this project. And it's also highlighted a little bit in this impact report, so you can read about it at another time, that it's still hard because the bale wrap needs to be clean. It needs to be dry. You can't have driven over it. It can't have ice on it. So it needs to be stored, in undercover in a dry kind of location. The hope is that like this pilot project will start to identify like some possible solutions. It's complicated and the pilot project is already identifying that it's very difficult. There's not really the structure and the capacity at the municipal solid waste districts to be able to store it. But they were at 14 tons collected and aggregated. It's taken like real passion of like driving around to farms to collect this bale wrap and ensure that it could be, reach the 18 to 20 ton minimum requirement to be able to be packed into a bale.
They're not putting 20 ton into one bale.
No.
No,
20 ton is the total.
That's their total.
Well, what's okay, yeah, I'm sorry, you're right.
They are big bales.
they look at,
Yeah, but it's not, the
Yeah,
2010 is over the lifetime of the pilot.
and they're just
Thank you.
using bale wrap plastic, which is a real thin film. They're not using like the 6 mil black on white bunker
I
plastic.
think they specifically are piloting just with bale wrap. Yeah.
This is also up for topic with the AIB. Now,
So, and right now, they're storing the plastic at
Farm.
a farm, at Guy Crosby's farm. And just because he's passionate about this and willing to make it work. So I think one of the reasons we're highlighting this is because it's gonna require some thought partnership, I think, at a state level to engage the municipal waste districts in supporting some of the storage and baling of this plastic, because they're facing a lot of challenges with that now, where the waste districts don't have the capacity to store, and some of them don't have the capacity to bale this plastic.
well, we require almost one of those industrial balers like people tried for hemp and whatnot that can bale silage and bale
So,
trash and whatnot.
It looks like each bale weighs about a ton.
but what they said is that, they do have balers in Lindenville and Brattleboro and also in Lebanon. But what those, waste districts don't have is the space to hold the loose plastic or the baled wrap, enough for it to accumulate for them to send it to a market in Pennsylvania. So there's like some supply chain challenges that we're gonna have to work out. I think.
So that was what it was. Yeah, the recycler requires an 18 to a 20 ton trailer load. So you have to accumulate,
40,000.
right.
Well, and if you're putting 1,000 pounds in a bale, that's a pretty prodigious pile.
I wonder whether, I don't think that, since you're highlighting it here, that we're going to hear more tomorrow from this particular, committee, but maybe at some point this session or next year, we could, if there's more to learn about, we could
For sure.
have some,
Yeah.
I think it would be great.
It's been a challenge that we at the agency have been trying to solve for, so really grateful that they've been willing to take it on.
Representative Wiltie.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because this white plastic's been blowing around for a decade.
Yeah.
But it occurs to me that the cost of gathering, cleaning, storing, packaging, I mean, they're really providing a neat environmental service.
Oh, for sure.
It's not like
They're
at
trying.
the end of the day,
Yeah.
they've got a profitable product here. It's
They're
might
trying,
cost a lot more to,
Oh, it's truly to just keep it out of the waste stream.
right.
Yeah.
there is a tipping fee at the landfills that farmers pay. But I think it's what you're saying though, like that, farmers wouldn't have to pay that tipping fee if it went the recycling route, but it's never gonna be like a profitable business. It really is
Yeah.
a ecosystem service. Yeah.
Yeah. Other great projects that were funded as well that we won't talk about today. The last piece that I just wanted to offer before turning it over to Director Pearson is that the technical assistance that happens by the program staff, both Claire and Elizabeth, on a routine basis is another form of technical assistance that the program provides. So I don't know how many calls they field, but when a funding opportunity is open and businesses have questions about what should they apply for, is this an appropriate use of the grant? Is this an eligible use of the grant? I know that they get, 24 calls a week kind of fielding those types of questions. And a big part of what the team does is sort of either direct them to have an understanding of how it would be a good fit for the grant, or maybe redirecting them, as Claire said, to another funding source, maybe recommending that they work with a business advisor, maybe giving them some feedback if they do end up applying but are not an awarded grantee, how to make their application stronger. And so I just want to say, there's just so much technical support that happens within the program at that level that doesn't show up on a slide as an investment made, but it's truly a benefit to so many dozens and dozens of businesses throughout the year. Okay.
Representative O'Brien.
Yes. Quickly, sure. Is anybody with sort of agritourism or accessory on farm business, are they eligible to apply?
Oh, yeah. And there's often agritourism related applications that we review and have certainly funded some of those projects in the past.
Accessory on farm business, is that?
Yeah, some of those as well. Yeah,
Okay.
that same category. Yeah. I mean, that's what we're seeing from many businesses and we've talked about that at different times, that they're doing more of that on-farm vertical integration or value-added processing that is starting to move them towards being a farm and an accessory business model to be profitable and to be viable.
Jennifer.
Chair, I think, obviously the program's great. It's providing seed money for, basically bolstering the economy for working lands.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a vital program for our state. And then I just wanted to make sure we're doing our due diligence with what's been requested of us in terms of asking some of the budgetary questions.
Yeah.
Operating costs, what do you have numbers on operating costs for the program?
So as we said earlier, the appropriation from the legislature all goes out in competitive awards at this time. The Agency of Agriculture has 2 positions, both Elizabeth and Claire, that sort of are program managers. And then we have a portion of one of our grants and contracts team members that provides the assistance around standing up the funding opportunity and the management of our web grant system. The management portal through which people apply and submit their claims and their progress reports. So that's the operating cost in addition to covering per diems, meals, and travel stipends for board members. Actually, Elizabeth, I think, has been working on what that annual budget is that comes out of the Agency of Agriculture. I don't know if you have a number kind of that sticks with you at the moment, but
keep sharing the slideshow and look it up.
I mean, I could probably guess that,
Go
oh, no,
ahead.
go ahead and give it a shot.
Well, I can tell you the exact operating, budget, actually, I mean, I guess. We'll just share my screen, be very
Transparent.
transparent here.
If you want to save that for tomorrow, that's, yeah, perfectly fine too.
The question or
The answer to the question, yeah.
my computer's also being incredibly slow.
If you have it right there, let's pop it up if it's gonna take a bit. We hold it.
So. 13,453.
And that's not, that doesn't include
projections.
staff, that's just for, that would just be the cost for the board.
That's the cost for the board, it's the cost for, yeah, basically the board, the symposiums, the impact reports, the grantee signs. We're making signs available to grantees to put on their businesses to help with public recognition of this program, this amazing program that most of the public doesn't know about. So grantees were able to sign up to request a sign. We had 63, is that right? Sign up. So, it'll be slowly but surely, we're hoping to get, more of these signs out into the landscape, so it becomes a more known entity by the folks that are frequenting these businesses, especially farm stands and sugar houses that offer like public events, but.
And then you would add 2 full-time equivalents plus a portion of the grants and contracts team if you're wanting to kind of like capture the full cost of administering and managing the program. I will say, and maybe not to get into great detail right now, in previous one-time appropriations towards the Working Lands program, we have used some of those funds to pay for one of the 2 positions. One of the 2 positions is a permanent position and one position is a limited service position. And actually, so is the portion of the grants and contracts position. So in government, when we have limited service positions, we use, special funds, either one-time appropriations, special funds, or federal funds to support those positions. So that's what we've been relying upon in the past few years, but not out of the base allocation of the $1 million or the, it was less than that 4 or 5 years ago.
Thinking back to earlier slides where you showed us how much larger, for a few years, the grant allotment was, just because we had more money at the time and maybe will again in the future. But I imagine that the administrative costs didn't double or triple. So there's efficiencies gained with, there it is.
Yeah, and I think that like 5 times the demand to the annual allocation has been pretty consistent for the past 5+ years. And I think that was like in line with, as Elizabeth shared, when the appropriations went up in 2022. So this was post-COVID money, and then ARPA funds, and then one-time appropriations. And we have kind of like pretty clearly recognized that the program requires the 2.5 FTEs to be able to administer the program, whether it's at $1 million of a base allocation or it's at $3 million of a
There's
base
a lot of
allocation.
efficiency of scale. Like a lot of what we do, we just have to do it no matter what. And so if we're doing it for 5 million or 1 million, it's like not that big a difference as far as like the job, the time it takes, I guess.
John?
Just thinking ahead on this conversation that, you have such great stories and you have this multiplier, like a 1 to 5 multiplier. So my question is like, why don't you ask for more? Like, is there a sweet spot where you're like, okay, well, there are all these great requests for grants, but at some point I can see it, they're just not ready for money if you had more money. But is there could Ag Dev say this would be that much better if we had 2 million a year?
Well, I mean, I think you know that we support the governor's recommend, but I think there's other stakeholders and the Working Lands Coalition that can sort of speak to kind of like what the ideal demand might be of resources for the program. But I would say that like, historically, it used to be that we would see a lot of applications come in that weren't really
Right.
ready. That is not so much the case in the last few years. I mean, certainly there's higher scoring and more shovel ready and, more direct and immediate impact, but the quality of applications has improved over the past 5 to 7 years significantly. So businesses are ready. It's just like, finding the right match of the amount of dollars that are also available. And it's hard.
So two things, the FY 27 governor's budget recommendation is a million.
It's $1 million, yes.
Base level funding.
Yes.
And we are also hearing, I think, next week from other stakeholders, as you said, who may have different ideas.
Great.
This program is great and in fact, I was on the committee when it was created.
I remember. Yeah.
And the goal back then was to reach 5 million. And when we started running around 7,000. That 5 or 5.5 millions in 22, that's COVID money that made that possible? Is that what was going on?
That was ARPA money. Yeah.
So then I'm curious, when you talk about leveraged funds, how is that calculated?
Applicants claim that in their proposal and in their project final report. So it's a self-reported.
But it's in the budget table. They say exactly what their matching funds are going to be used for.
So I'm thinking back, I thought we were looking at higher percentages of leverage funds. If I'm reading all the way back to the second slide, if I'm reading this correctly, 19.5 million in funds awarded and 32 leverage, that's like 61%. Is that enough?
Say more about your question. Is that enough for the projects to be completed?
We're handing out money, we would expect a bigger return for this kind of program than not even 100%.
I wouldn't say that money is return on investment. It's money that's also being put into the same
Well, it's
project.
leveraged, but it's still only like 60%.
Yeah, so I think of the leveraged funds being, that could be the business's contribution. They make a cash contribution, or it could be an in-kind contribution of they're using their own equipment that they're not, charging or paying anyone for. It could be that the project is the grant project is a small portion of a larger effort that they're doing at their business, that they actually have additional loan funding or raised capital that they sometimes say it's coming out of our savings or right out of our checkbook that is covering the rest of the project. So those are the examples of kind of like the leveraged resources that we've typically seen on applications and projects.
As I say, I was hoping that would be higher. So I guess my ultimate question here, though, is the funds requested, am I reading this correctly, 5.3 million?
Yes, in 26.
Given the current financial climate, if this committee goes to appropriations suggesting 5.3, they're just going to laugh at us. That's my opinion. So how much should this committee actually ask for and realistically expect appropriations to listen to us? It's great. It's great. I mean, if we're going to give away money, there are always going to be people lined up who are willing to take it and use it. And that's great. We're promoting some really good stuff, but we don't have the money.
Right.
So I think that the folks who are here today from the agency aren't in a position to.
Well, yeah, that's not the only one.
Yeah, but we will, but hold that question, because we'll have other people who, as I mentioned, I think have may help us answer that question more easily. And I will just say, though, before we go on, and I am mindful of the time here, that and I think we talked about this earlier, at one point there was an explicit correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah, 1-to-1 match.
matching requirement,
Oh, yes, I was gonna mention, yeah.
which would have contributed to that
Mhm.
31 million. And then presumably people were also saying, because I got this grant, I was also able to get this grant and maybe included that in that number as well. Whereas today, you're not asking for that match. It's still, we're looking at it as a good investment. The return on the investment isn't what we're showing here. It's really, that number was really, here's
Yeah.
other people who helped put in
Yeah.
the.
I think when I think of the return on investment personally, like, I think of, I guess specifically, I think of when grants are increasing sales, like that's direct return, because there's a sales tax on that, right? So the state's making that money back directly. I mean, I think these businesses, like we said, just the 2025 cohort has an annual sales revenue of 12.2 million. So, you know, I don't actually know what, it would be interesting to know exactly what that calculation is like. You know, are those sales actually, maybe not from 1 year, but over a number of years, like just funding this program itself. You know, it's an economic engine that we're funding. And that's like, it's kind of a cutthroat analysis, right? Because that's not even talking to the fact that these businesses are the businesses that are keeping Vermont beautiful, feeding the communities, you know, keeping our lands working. But I think job creation, that like the sales tax, and certainly the number of acres, I think that are benefiting from this program, like for me, that's the return on investment. I think that we have to.
And those are the metrics that are tracked over time.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And
Why don't we, think we still, maybe we're gonna hear from Oliver.
Great.
I just asked, when you add FTEs, are you counting, you know, jobs created and income tax that's coming back to the state in that calculation too?
no. What would that? I'd be interested to hear more about what you're thinking as far as, I'm always curious about like,
Just that return, because if you create a job, you know,
Yeah.
there's a certain amount coming back to
coming
the
back,
state
yeah,
too.
I thought of it more through the sales tax.
Right, well, that's the other, yeah.
Because a lot of our investments are increasing business sales.
Who has no sales tax?
Right.
That's
That's no sales tax.
Well, yeah, but value added food does, right? Like if we're talking about restaurants, if we're talking about some of the like more agri-tourism, I mean, it's certainly, yeah, that's a good point though. I think I'm thinking about it more
Everything this project does has value.
yeah, it's still circulating in the economy, those dollars are in the economy.
All right, I think we've got just another short set of slides here, but an important one focusing on the forestry economy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. For the record, Oliver Pearson, Director of Forests within the Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation. I'll talk a little bit about WeLab's importance for the forest products sector in Vermont, and then try to wrap up this presentation and let's talk about a few examples along the way. So just for some context, as you've heard us say before, the forest sector is one of the sort of fiscal leaders of Vermont's natural resource economy, along with agriculture and some other sectors. And elements of that, such as logging, forest trucking, milling, secondary processing, are vital pieces of this forest economy. It's a priority for the state to support these industries to thrive and contribute to economic growth and forest health. But these industries, like many others, are suffering lots of different challenges because of market pressures, rising costs, climate change, labor shortages, consistent with regional challenges. And so we're seeing more contraction here than we'd like, with mills closing, loggers getting rid of their equipment, et cetera. And there's not a lot of programs out there that support new entrants into this sector and expansion of existing businesses. But the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative is one of those, and it plays an extremely important role in helping to maintain the important economic contributions of the forest products industry to the state. So we're thrilled in FPR that when the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative was created, that forestry was put essentially on par with agriculture in this initiative, and it's played such a really important role for forest sector businesses over the years. We're working to support the forest products industry through the implementation of the roadmap. We have small, large, medium-sized programs to support loggers, to support the forest products industry, and Working Lands Enterprise Initiative is a really important part of that. It's helping businesses grow, add employees, modernize, increase efficiency, and get over hurdles that they wouldn't have been able to otherwise. Many of these forest sector businesses are capital intensive, and WeLab grants, sometimes in relatively small amounts, sometimes larger amounts, have had really important impacts for businesses in this sector. I'll get into these slides in a minute. One thing that's not up there, but we've had conversations in this committee before about workforce development and the challenges that the forest products industry faces with recruiting new talent, recruiting new labor. And so it's an exciting effort that WeLab has undertaken to provide a scholarship for up to 3 Vermont residents to go to Maine and take a logging and trucking mechanized training course that Professional Logging Contractors of the Northeast has been offering over the years. And I just learned today there have been some questions about whether or not the federal funding for that would come through, which would put a question mark next to whether that MLOF training would be offered in Maine and Vermont residents could participate. But I just learned today from PLC that has come through. And so this will be a really exciting new opportunity for students, apprentices or aspiring professionals in the mechanized logging and trucking sector to get trained by one of the region's best established programs and bring those skills back to Vermont. So we're excited about that. A few examples of projects that WeLab, Working Lands Enterprise Initiative, has supported over the years in the forest sector. A $50,000 grant to Vermont Heavy Timber, which is a timber drying and storage facility in Huntington. And the structure that the grant made available helped them store timbers, often sourced in Vermont that have been processed through Vermont Heavy Timber, their sawmill, and they're waiting to be cut or installed, and historic timber frames are erected into new timber frames. So this is a successful business in Vermont that was able to expand its capacity through this grant. And I'll move quickly, Chair, in recognition of the time. Maple is one of those sectors that sort of crosses both ag and forestry sectors. We focus on the sap. They focus on the production of the high quality grade A maple. This maple farm was hoping to install a wireless monitoring system to help them sort of manage all the tap lines and get everything into the boiling sugar house. And so this grant was to help them to increase production and labor efficiency and really do some interesting stuff, pinpoint in their many, many miles of lines where their trouble areas are, if there's a vacuum leak, if there's a blockage, identify that remotely, get out there, repair it, and really reduce the amount of labor required to search for and fix vacuum leaks. So that was pretty exciting. The next one is in East Cal, so one of our larger grants, $50,000 for Sawyer made to expand their production facility that helped them to meet some growth needs. And this one is sort of exciting because just looking at my notes here, their output has increased by 100% since they received this grant in 2022. And so it really shows the impact. The grant allowed them to expand their facility by adding a finishing room for painting, oiling, and storing the chairs that are made on site. So this is one of these again, successful rural businesses that provides employment in a part of the state where there aren't a ton of other options. And it was great that we were able to support them. And then finally, the last example we'll cite is the J.K. Adams Company, which is a cutting board company that is based here in Vermont. And this is another example of a grant that helped them increase production through new equipment and do some marketing of their products. So really excited about that one as well. They were able to launch a new line of cutting boards sourced entirely from Vermont timber as a result of this grant. These examples are, what you see there is examples throughout the forest sector. We have made some deliberate efforts to increase outreach about the initiative to logging and trucking businesses because they've been a bit underrepresented in the past couple of years. And in this latest crop grant applications. I think we saw that outreach was successful. There was a number of applications from logging and trucking businesses that we're in the process of reviewing right now. So wrap it up, Chair. I think, as you've just heard, great, one of the J.K. Adams cutting boards. Say it again?
Black chart.
The uniqueness of the Working Lands program is really based on the effectiveness of the program structure and the way the structure supports the ongoing evolution and success of the program. And I'll say that to have a program with the commitment of the Agency of Agriculture to provide 2 staff to manage anywhere between 1 million to, I think, what was our high year, $6 million, $5 or $6 million of funding is phenomenal. It's one of the better managed efforts that I'm involved in. I think the board's expertise is a key part of it as well. As has been said, we have an extremely talented, experienced, and committed board. And I'm always amazed that these very busy business professionals are going to spend their time going through, grant applications and process improvement in painstaking fashion. That shows their commitment to and recognition of the importance of this initiative. We want to note that there's a number of statewide partners and networks that are involved and consulted and sort of a partner to We Lab. Farm to Plate is one. New England is Feeding New England. And the We Lab investments are critical to the success of the businesses and the viability of the business that those organizations support. And it's also helping establish a regional food system and forest product sector in Vermont that feeds into ongoing efforts throughout the broader region. So I'll conclude by saying, the founding statute of the Working Lands Initiative was designed to create a nimble program that can adapt and stay effective and relevant and involving in challenging context. And as a result, the working landscape that we all cherish is protected and improved through this program. I think I'll stop there, but happy to take any questions about the forestry pieces or any other of the comments that were made.
Thank you, Oliver. Representative Nelson.
2 quick ones. Do you have dedicated staff to this as well, or is this funded by the agriculture side of things?
Yeah, we do not. We have, so Commissioner Fitzko is sort of the Forest Parks and Rec representative to the board. I fill in for her when she's busy, and we have one staff member, Catherine Servadio, our Forest Economy Program Manager, who spends a lot of time on sort of the day-to-day details of grant review and administration and advising the commissioner and me on how to proceed in reviewing the grant. So FPR doesn't make a direct financial contribution to the WLAB program, but we provide in-kind support through staff time.
And does Forest and Parks put up any of the $1 million? Does that all come through the Agency of Agriculture?
It's the latter. It comes through the Agency of Agriculture. I think our role is to recognize and support this program, recognizing its importance for forest products businesses, but our budget doesn't provide specific funding for this purpose.
Absolutely, it's important for our brethren in the working lands. I just wondered if we could expand it to $2 million and get ANR to release some of it. There, I said it.
Representative O'Brien.
I'm pretty sure that the Angels in Randolph, the White Rock Sawmill was the recipient. And then we also heard last week from Sam Lincoln, former deputy commissioner, that they had some Act 250 permitting difficulties.
Okay.
So I was wondering, can you apply and get technical assistance or even use, sometimes we hear it costs $100,000 for Act 250. Is that eligible for a grant?
Yeah.
It is.
It is.
We gave a grant to LSF Forest Products in Fletcher because
They're the other one we heard about, right?
So they had a grant that paid for some of the stormwater and engineering.
That's great.
And their costs were higher than White Rock, but it was still significant. We provided more, and Forest Parks and Recreation provided a small grant to White Rock to help with the permitting process. We provided more of what Abby was talking about, talking it through with the business owner about, and doing a little bit of follow-up, sort of state to state follow-up with the person who was being very slow at supporting the permitting process. I was able to say, like, this is a grantee, like, I'd like an update on, they've submitted XYZ, like, when is this gonna be reviewed? Because it is it can be quite a slow process. But they're completely through it now. Both.
I mean, that's almost another type of leveraging if you say FPR or Ag
Yes,
Dev
like,
has got
we're
my
waiting
back,
on
right?
you.
Yeah.
Yes, totally, yeah.
Representative Bartholomew.
There was mention earlier of metrics that measure the success of this program beyond leveraged funds. What kind of metrics are those and where can we see those numbers?
Okay, let me go back. Not, I don't know. So I think these are some of the metrics that we think are. So 48% of business grantees added jobs through the grant funded project. 77% of grantees increased production capacity, 74% increased sales. And then again, collectively, grantees are stewarding a minimum of 25,000 acres. And that's a low estimate. And I would say that we're also very open, like, to hearing, like, is there data that would be like, specifically very interesting to the committee, because we can pull data.
Those are percentages, though you don't have dollar amounts anywhere, I guess.
So yeah, I can speak to some of this. I would say because this program is 12 years old and there's been a variety of staff turnover, we sort of inherited a certain set of numbers, a set of data. So this is data that we have that goes back to the life of the program. And some of it was missing. And so when you have, we're trying to report on like hard numbers of jobs, but we don't have it for a certain year, that's where we wanted to lean on percentages. But we have taken a few years, honestly, to overhaul like what our data collection plan is and metrics, because we know it's important. And this year, the FY25 grantees are the first ones that are answering different questions in their final reports. And it will be a lot more data heavy, but we only have a few of those grantees that are done so far. So we won't have all of that information going back, but we will have that moving forward. Specifically, questions I think Representative O'Brien, you spoke to earlier, asking about, did you increase jobs, and asking like how much do you think the grant was responsible, like on a scale of 1 to 5 to that like added job or that increase in sales? Because we know that sometimes these things are happening independently and sometimes they're directly related, and we want to capture that.
But I think there's still a chance that we will go back and mine and share some of the data and just name the years that are missing. Like if the data is not available, like jobs created.
Or I guess what I'm saying is moving forward, we could say for next year, we could say in FY25, this many jobs were added. We just don't have that data
That
yet.
information would be more useful because you're looking like 74% businesses increase sales. Well, was that 5% increase, 25%? It's hard to know. It's hard to interpret a percentage and know really what that means in terms of success, measuring success.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, I think anything like that would be helpful, and to the extent that it's also possible to quantify, and I imagine this is a much heavier task, but I was thinking when we were looking at the maple, the illustrations of the folks who had received grants in the maple sector, to what extent do we know that that's expanding Vermont's share of maple sales as opposed to cannibalizing somebody else's, a smaller business that isn't able to make that investment and can't compete? Just as an illustration, and that's, again, that's probably a bigger, a more difficult task, but Representative Lipsky.
Yeah, I was seeing J.K. Adams, it occurred to me, do any recipients ever close or go out of business? And was it not enough life support, or, I mean, is it 25% end up failing with this is basically 13-year span you're talking about? And is J.K. Adams still endorsing?
Yes, very much so.
Probably the last, I think wood products producer, one of the few, it's over a century old.
Wow.
It's wonderful. They're doing well.
We could check in with,
Mike
our
Rice.
former colleague, but yeah, so. Does somebody else have a question, or does somebody else have anything you want to?
I don't know that we know, to answer your question, Representative Lipsky, about the percentage of businesses that fail. I don't have a percentage. I don't know if Elizabeth or Claire do, but I can think of one business that failed because the business owner died. And, you know, that was a loss for the family, and they had to make decisions of like whether they could continue maintaining their business or not. It's not a metric that we track, but it's very rare that we've had a business go out of business during the time frame that they had a grant. Might they go out of business, 3, 4, 5 years later? That may occur. We don't kind of have that longevity data.
It just occurred to me that, we're tracking how many farmers we lose every year.
Yeah.
How many product businesses, from mills or some. Maybe we'd have more without the program.
Oh, absolutely.
Obviously.
Yeah.
I was just going to comment to Representative Bartholomew's question. The applications ask applicants a series of questions that then could lead, if the grant's awarded and implemented, to metrics. I'm looking at an application right now, and there's questions about, will the project result in increased gross sales? If so, by how much? Will the project allow you to access new markets, sell new products, increase efficiency, increase employment? So that we ask the applicants to provide a lot of data regarding how the grant might support their business. And I think we could perhaps share the blank application with the committee. And if there's lines in there like, boy, we'd really like to see how that metric played out with your successful grants, that might be something we could do.
We can absolutely share, and the final report is maybe even, we can share both.
Yep.
But I think, as we said, I think we've strengthened our data collection largely with Claire's leadership. But what's challenging for us is the cumulative, right? So going forward, we're gonna have, we'll share it with you. We're gonna have very strong data on increased sales, exact numbers. We're gonna have data on new jobs created. We're gonna have data on increased, product output. We're gonna have data on acres, increased acreage in production. We're gonna have data on equity, projects that are investing in, equity outcomes like accessibility to food, to local food, to new product, to new populations. So I think it would be interesting to share it and get feedback maybe on the.
I mean, I think that's great, and I don't think that you should be worried, or that anybody's gonna be asking hard questions about what happened 10 years ago. It's really more about, the last fiscal year, or, some reasonable amount of time.
I just want to say Vermont can be really proud of this program. And I've got to say, I'm proud to be one of its architects.
Yeah.
And I just wish we could throw all the money at it. There are few states that can boast having this kind of program in place, if any. I don't know if there are any.
Well, interestingly, we've helped Maine quite a bit over the past year develop a program that they're modeling off of this. So we've shared a lot of information and learning with that institution that's trying to copy Vermont, because we're unique.
Once again, Vermont's a leader, and hope we can find more money.
This is an important program, and we are going to take more testimony out tomorrow from four of the grant companies. And then that will not be the end of the conversation. So I think there'll be an opportunity, if there's anything else that you, based on questions or the conversation, want to bring back, we'll be sure to make time for that. We are running a little bit over, but Representative Burke, did you have one other?
Oh, I'm just gonna, it sounds like there's opportunity to ask questions tomorrow.
Yeah, okay. And Elizabeth, are you back tomorrow to start things off?
Mhm.
Right. Well, I thank you. I appreciate everybody's time and making time for our committee in addition to the Senate committee. That's very helpful. Thank you. We're not done. You guys can all. Thank you. We will take a short break, but don't go too far, because You have one more topic.